Hello Pro Strikers. Today we're diving into the world of Muay Thai to spotlight one of its most electrifying athletes, Superlek Kiat Mu 9. Let's start by taking a look at his stance. Superlek stands in orthodox stance, his left side in the lead. A traditional Muay Thai stance distributes the majority of a fighter's weight onto the back leg, particularly in the early going of a bout when the fighter wants to take a look at their opponent. This stance enables a fighter to defend with their front leg quicker with either a check or to teep at a moment's notice, rather than that of a wide boxing stance with the weight distributed more evenly. When in this narrowed stance, he will position his hands high, making him defensively very sound. Like all good Thai fighters, Superlek will adjust his base dependent on the attacks he's looking to do, but this stance is his safe place to be. Kicking game. He has the name the kicking machine for a reason. The rear leg roundhouse kick is his best weapon. When looking to score with his back leg, Superlek will redistribute his weight, coming up on the toes of his back foot, making the back leg much more reactive. The downside to this stance adjustment is it switches his front leg defence offline and he is far less reactive with his left side. His right, however, is like a coiled spring. It's risk versus reward dependent on what he wants to do. Here we can see Kong Thorani score with his own rear leg roundhouse kick, which Superlek absorbs but counters back with the right hand. Superlek is choosing a give and take approach, willing to take one to land one from this stance. If Superlek feels he's being scored on a little too much, he will bounce on both feet to enable him to strike or evade in an instant, and he will use his footwork to jockey in and close distance, picking whichever strike presents itself first. This on the toes posture is a way of switching all of his weapons on and geeing himself up to go. Against Takeru, we see Superlek switch his back foot on, coming up on his toes and then peppering Takeru with punches, forcing his hands up and bringing his weight onto his front leg to brace, or his front leg will be trailing as he retreats. This is when Superlek will uncork a thunderous low kick at the perfect time. When boxing, a fighter will often plant their feet to punch with power, and Superlek is no different, but he makes a tactical choice to not commit to his punches and use them as smoke and mirrors to disguise the kick, staying on his toes with the right foot engaged so he can throw a kick if Takeru retreats, or adjust his weapon to a knee if Takeru were to step in. Keeping the feet switched on, staying on the balls of the feet, toes gripping the floor is a very important detail of his kicking game. It is what enables him to react and adjust what he's doing in the moment. The Teep. The Teep is definitely a big part of his kicking game, but I think it deserves its own attention. The Teep is a lead leg front kick. It's like a boxer's jab when it comes to Muay Thai. As talked about previously, Superlek's base is a narrow stance with a light lead leg, which enables him to teep at will. The rhythmical bounce of the lead foot in Muay Thai is to keep the leg reactive. Superlek can then use this weapon twofold. He has the push kick as a defence if the opponent steps in, or he can pester the opponent by stabbing at them to the leg or body from mid-range, disrupting their rhythm. This can be a very painful and irritating technique to deal with. Superlek can then build on this by using a raised lead leg as a feint to set up attacks. He also uses this raised lead leg to creep in and gain distance in the ring. If he feels the distance is off, as the opponent steps in for example, he will long step back, pushing off of the lead foot as it lands and take a large step backwards with his rear leg to reposition himself. He then goes back to raising the lead leg as a preventative measure, causing hesitation in the opponent as they're expecting a front kick. Superlek can then hop in and force the opponent back. On this occasion, the opponent chooses to disengage, meaning no offensive opportunities present themselves, but Superlek earns some ring and put the opposition on the back foot, which can be an often undervalued play. Elbows. Elbows have the ability to change a fight in an instant. They cut the skin so easily, they can cause a considerable amount of superficial damage that can sometimes be enough to end the fight. Of course, kicks hurt and will score points, but nothing reveals a fighter's intent to hurt quite the same as flying in with an elbow. This means it can be used not only as a weapon to cause damage, but also used as an intimidation tactic to make an opponent wary of coming forward. Here Superlek hops in with a lead leg feint, but he has withdrawn the rear elbow to clearly show his intentions. It's letting Haggerty know He means business and is looking to do damage, and this is something Superlek likes to do early in a bout. His aggression establishes his authority. If Superlek doesn't have respect for his opponent, he will force the issue early, and the spike elbow is his go-to weapon. Here we see Superlek fly out the blocks and get straight into it. He's a little reckless at times, launching at the opponent and leaving himself open, sometimes wearing a punch for his troubles, but he gets the job done, finding a home for the elbow within the opening round, showing its effectiveness. He combines two tactics we've already discussed in the video to be offensive in close. He will either hop in with the lead leg feint or engage his back leg as if he is going to kick with the right leg and shuffle his way in. With both methods, he's very active with his lead hand, looking to fish for the opponent's arms or hands so he can use them for leverage and pull himself in to land an elbow. He can also use the lead arm to get physical and push his opponent back, making the opponent go back on their heels before he can crash in with a knee or elbow. The advantage of a high guard in Muay Thai is the ability to intercept an oncoming opponent with an upward elbow. In boxing, this position may leave the body exposed, but in Muay Thai, the elbows can be a game changer. Superlek will have his hands high on his head whilst his elbows protrude forward. There's also a high chance of the opponent hurting their hands punching into this guard. Superlek is using this guard like a razor wire fence. It isn't only a defence, but a weapon if the opponent comes in close enough, and it doesn't require much adjustment on Superlek's part to land an elbow. Like any good Thai fighter, Superlek knows his way around the clinch. The clinch can be used offensively to drown opponents with elbows, knees and fatiguing grappling exchanges, but it can also be used to stall. Superlek's best defence comes through entering into the clinch, not usually from within it. As talked about prior, his elbows usually come from just before a grapple is initiated. Here we see him against Chris Shaw. Shaw is a good puncher and his best work comes when he's on the front foot. Superlek pressed Shaw back early with a stiff lead arm and looked to pick elbows from just outside of the clinch, and he used his long arms as posts to prevent being tied up. Against Rodtang, a heavy pressure fighter with a strong boxing, Superlek would capitalise on the fingerless gloves by grabbing at Rodtang's hands and forearms. This would help control the distance between the two men, making it hard for Rodtang to let go with his hands, whilst also allowing Superlek to land elbows and get back to range. Superlek's use of the clinch is more to do with tactically controlling the pace of a fight and buying himself a rest while still being able to score points. Rather than looking to break an opponent's posture and pull their head down in the clinch, he opts to tie up the arms and nullify the opponent's ability to box an elbow. Here we see him against Rodtang securing the inside position to alleviate pressure and stifle Rodtang's boxing. However, Rodtang adjusted and gained the body lock on a couple of occasions from which he was able to dump Superlek to the floor. This can be a disadvantage of the position. Under kickboxing rules, extended clinch is prohibited, but Superlek would bend the rule slightly and use overhooks to prevent opponents from opening up on the inside. Here we see Superlek use overhooks to prevent Takeru from punching in close. This is a common strategy used in boxing to limit how effective a fighter can be on the inside. Go and study Floyd Mayweather, who was a master of prevention when it came to inside fighting in the squared circle. It's like the old saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. Boxing. Although Superlek has predominantly competed in Muay Thai, he successfully transitioned over to kickboxing to become One Championship's Flyweight Kickboxing World Champion. Superlek might not be a professional boxer, but he has good boxing IQ. He knows where he is in the cage or ring and positions himself accordingly to maximise his advantages and nullify his opponent's weapons. He has an excellent jab and he can definitely dog it out when he needs to. Superlek jabs to the backhand of Takeru, which Takeru meets with a parry. Superlek jabs again, only this time above Takeru's glove so he can pull his hand down and out of the way. He bridges the gap by hopping in, lead leg high and slots another jab straight down the middle into Takeru's face, forcing him back, which allows Superlek to mount more offence. Here Superlek varies his jab to occupy Takeru's hands and vision, whilst he circles right to avoid the power side of the Japanese fighter. Here we see Superlek face hard-hitting Spaniard Daniel Puertas. Puertas comes forward relentlessly, forcing Superlek to the cage wall. He will try to walk the tie down, absorbing kicks and knees in order to let go of his own combinations on the inside. But by the third round, Superlek had had enough, and he manages to turn Puertas to the cage wall and begins to unload with his own boxing combinations. He was using clever dips under Puertas' shots, and then physical controls, pushing at Puertas' guard and putting things in the way to prevent counters to keep the Spanish fighter in front of him and under pressure. Much like we see Superlek use the lead arm to line up his rear elbow, he does the same thing to land his power backhand, chopping it in and hurting his opponent several times in this bout. As talked about previously, Superlek's best work comes from just outside of the clinch, not from within it, and his knees are no exception. Here we see Superlek march his way in to land the left knee on Takeru. The marching footwork, with Superlek stepping his right foot forward to bridge the gap, is a great way to go from A to B quickly. Superlek will change his tempo, often going from being on the back foot to being on the offensive quickly. If against an opponent that is coming forward to apply pressure, this footwork is a great way to catch them by surprise and quickly ruins any plans they had to attack. By timing the footwork correctly, it allows Superlek to have the jump on an opponent. Here we see Superlek step forward utilising the same marching footwork and use his hands to turn Puertas and get himself off of the cage wall. He has one hand controlling the head and one controlling the tricep, pivoting around on the balls of his feet as he steps through. The danger with the knee is it puts a fighter on one leg whilst in punching range of the opponent. This means punches that intercept a fighter as their knee can be devastating, which is why it is recommended to control the arms and posture of an opponent when kneeing. That said, a knee that intercepts a punch can be equally as devastating when timed correctly. This is something that a fighter may make the choice to wager their weapon against that of the opponent if they believe they will score more damage than they receive. Resilience. Resilience refers to the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, adapt well in the face of adversity, and maintain a positive outlook despite challenges. In the context of Muay Thai, resilience is crucial as fighters endure physical pain, mental stress, and emotional pressures both in training and during fights. Superlek was pretty much fighting for his life during the bout with Rodtang. He was badly cut and put under immense pressure, but Superlek would rally back with his own aggressive onslaughts and would not back down. It's hard to say whether this resilience comes down to his genetic makeup, intense training regime, or the sheer amount of experience he has to call upon, having hundreds of fights under his belt. I think it's a combination of all of the above. As of this video, I don't believe he has ever been knocked out, which means a man standing across the ring can have little faith in the proverbial puncher's chance. Knocking him out isn't a basket I'd recommend putting all your eggs into when it comes to a game plan. Whoever stood across from Superlek is in for a hard night. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also support the channel via Patreon and access extra breakdowns and tutorials over there. The link will be in the bio. Let me know in the comments which fights you'd like me to break down next. Pro Striking appreciates you more than watching Superlek spear elbow a man in the opening exchange.
Yeah, it looked like he fell backwards, but he popped right back up and his belly got again. That's why he's the favorite, fellas. That's why he's the favorite. You know, we talk about Superlek's right leg, but one punch man. Here, Rodtang did a good job of just crossing distance over and over and over and trying. They're changing. This is